Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Cultural Reset Artist Interview Series. We are thrilled to present in this month of Women's Month an artist who goes between LA and Venezuela and varies in genres, blending pop and R&B and folk and all kinds of genre bending, which we love to see. So without further ado, our artist for this week is Barbara Teresa. Welcome.
You.
And so if you want to introduce yourself to everybody, go right ahead.
Well, I'm Barbara Teresa. I'm an 18-year-old singer-songwriter. I'm originally from Caracas, Venezuela. But my family usually splits time between there and LA, and I'm currently taking a gap year. I graduated last year, and so this semester I've been in California just making music and kind of focusing on what I love.
Oh
And
wow!
next year I'm off to Duke. Yeah.
For a master's degree?
Congrats.
No, for an undergrad.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh
Haven't
my
gone.
gosh, I was thinking that you got done with school and you did the gap year after. I get it.
No. Gap year right after high school and then before college. Yeah.
That's good.
Cool. So congratulations on that. I want to say, like, that's really incredible. Like, one, you're like living your dream in California, making music, but then you're also going to like a really big, like, top 10 university.
Thank you.
So you got a lot going on, man. I'm really proud of you. So per all like our usual interviews, we're gonna start off by asking you the standard question that we always ask all of our artists. Where and when did your creative journey begin?
That's a good question. Um, Honestly, I can't really pinpoint it to one specific moment because I think I've just loved music my whole life since before I can even remember. But if I had to, I would probably pin it down to second grade. We were having a barbecue at my place, and at my house we had this karaoke machine, and I always loved singing on it, but that was kind of it. And that night, one of my cousins, she like went up and sang a Brian Adams song, and I fell in love with it. And so that year, I started like singing it all the time, all the time, all the time. And I auditioned for the school talent show that year, which was usually composed of high schoolers and like older middle school kids. And I got a slot. And after performing that night, like I was what, like 7? After performing, then I was like, okay, I if I could do something for the rest of my life, it would probably be this. And so I
And
just went on from there.
so you made that decision in second grade.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a decision because I think it's something that's always been lingering in the back of my head, but I always thought of it as something unattainable. Like, yeah, it's just a dream, like if it happens. And I never really found the right moment or opportunity to jump into it.
Hmm.
Um, but this year I realized like I just have to stop, waiting for a right time and just kind of go for it if it's something that I really want. So I mean, I've known I've loved music since I was very young, and so about that age, I started enrolling in music lessons, like to play instruments, and then voice lessons later on. But it was always something that I thought like, oh, it'll probably just end up being a hobby, even though I want it to be so much more.
So what was that sort of jump for you between hobby and I want to make money off of this? Like I want this to be my profession, my life.
It was pretty recent, actually. I would say, kind of the start of lockdown last year. I've been writing my own songs since I was like 13, 14 years old, probably, but I never really shared them with anyone. I would just kind of like people knew that I liked singing, but they hadn't really heard my original stuff. Then when quarantine started, I kind of, I think before that, I was a little like everyone with some stuff. I was worried about what other people would think.
Hmm.
And I was way too concerned with that I just didn't do like what I wanted to do because of out of fear, out of fear of judgment. And as soon as I was stuck inside at home, I was like, okay, I'm probably not leaving for a while, so who cares? Who cares when either way, like who cared before, who cares now? So I was like, I'm just gonna do it because like if I mean, if you always think that way, like if you think, oh, I'm not going to do this because I'm scared of what X person will say or what X group of people will think of me, then you're not going to ever get anything done. So I was like, whatever, I'm just going to go for it. So probably March, April last year.
Wow, that's amazing. You're fresh into it, but you're
Yeah.
already doing so well. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So do you feel like there is some kind of deeper purpose you feel for yourself, or like a mission that you are trying to portray through this creative outlet?
Hmm. Well, honestly, I think before considering myself even like a musician, I consider myself a storyteller. I love telling stories, whether that be through visual media, through writing, or through music. That's what I love doing the most. And to be able to share, I just think it's really special what musicians can do, where they share their own stories or other people's stories through music, and they can connect so many people with it. I just think that's a very beautiful thing. And if you can make someone feel less alone through your music or make someone feel seen, I think that's such a special thing, and it would be awesome to be able to do that. Also, writing and music in general is kind of like therapy for me, so it would be great if I could do it for a living.
It's like a plus, like a mental health plus.
Yeah, exactly.
A journal of sorts.
Right.
Honestly, yes.
I'm sure, like, so you said that you started writing music at 13 or 14. So you've been writing now for like, a while. Do you
Yeah.
have like just a buildup of like books full of lyrics and
Yeah.
songs, and you're like getting them down on paper? And
Yeah.
what a
So,
great project for COVID, especially, but also to set yourself
mhm,
up.
100%. I I started actually just journaling because
Mhm.
I mean I started doing it when I was a little. I don't know why. Probably because in movies, like when some you see characters like writing their diary and stuff. So I started when I
You
was really.
diary.
Yeah, I literally started because of that, because I thought I was so cool and quirky for having a journal. And so I started with that. And eventually I was like, okay, I kind of want to do something with it.
Mhm.
I think it was more like, yeah, probably when I was 13, 14, when I started writing, I would always like, whenever I was feeling like really strong emotions, I would try and find a song that matched that emotion and
Mhm.
like I could just listen to and just relate to. And then sometimes my scenarios and like everything that was going on in my life was so specific to me. I was like, there's nothing, like, how do I search this on Google? How do I find a song that I can relate to? And so I was like, okay, I might as well just write them myself. And so I started writing them, and I'm kind of bad at keeping journals because I start one and then I just think notebooks are so cute. So I always buy a bunch. And so I have like half filled notebooks with lyrics from like 5 years ago, and then like just a ton of them.
Mhm.
But from like a year ago to now, most of my stuff I write it in my on my phone in my notes. It's just easier. Sometimes I'm just walking around and I'll be like, oh, like I'll think of a lyric and I'll write it down there.
Mhm.
I try passing it on to a notebook, um, but I lose track sometimes. So my phone is kind of my sacred place for lyrics. If anyone goes into my notes, that would be pretty embarrassing.
Do
I
you
know
ever
a
find
lot
yourself
of
like
artists do that.
I know, yeah, we talked to one though. Lex was one who talked about like how she like always records like her stuff on her phone, like her
Oh my
lyrics.
gosh, no! My voice. If anyone were to go through my, I think going through my voice memos might be worse than my notes. Like literally, there's stuff in there. Like sometimes I will. I mean, I'm so glad this is starting to happen to me. Like this is what I want. But sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, this is such a good idea. And so like I'll have absolutely no voice, because when I wake up in the morning, I literally talk like this. Like I can't talk in the morning or in the middle of the night. So I'll have an idea for a melody, and then I'll like sing it really quietly, and I listen to it in the morning, and it sounds so bad. The lyrics make no sense, but I end up making something out of it. They're just really embarrassing voice memos.
Do you ever go back to the things that you've written before, like a long time ago, and like read them? Like, and if so, what do you think about that? Like, what do you learn about yourself?
Yeah, well, I try, because I do think you can learn a lot about yourself by doing that. Sometimes it's just too cringy. But I do. I think I honestly I love going back and looking back on everything, not just song lyrics. I'm a very nostalgic person, and so I like looking back on things from my past, which can be seen as a good thing, but it's also a bad thing at times because I get hung up on things. But anyways, lyrics. I do go back and I read them, and while I think it's kind of funny, like the stuff I wrote about was super unsubstantial and stupid and just like bad writing, I still think like it's so nice to see that growth through my writing.
Mhm.
But
Hmm.
honestly, I think the biggest growth has been from, like last March to now, because that's when I started. Because I would write, I just wouldn't write obsessively like I do now. Like there'll be days where I get like two or three songs down like completely, because it's kind of, I don't know, my brain just is like like reprogrammed itself.
Hmm.
And I read some of the stuff that I wrote like last March, or I look at old videos, and I'm like, I can't believe that was so recent, because the growth has been pretty big. So I think sometimes when I need to remind myself, like, oh, you're doing a good job, I'll go back and be like, just look how far you've come.
That's great. We all need that, self-validation and reassurance.
Yeah, for
We're
sure.
actually growing and getting better. I know that I started painting probably, I think I was like a junior in college when I started painting, and it wasn't very good, but I still love to look back at it because I feel like inspired by my
Mhm.
awkward attempts at painting.
100%.
Um, yeah, but it's also like being able to take down that barrier of self-judgment. Because I feel like you've come past that barrier rather recently. You were saying how, it would be embarrassing, I'm sure, if somebody were to get into your notes or read one of your journals from when you were younger, but at some point you're just got to be like, who cares?
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. And honestly, so what you said, like looking back, kind of serves as inspiration. That, like, honestly, same for me, because sometimes I look back on stuff and I'm like, okay, this might not be that good, but there's ideas in there that I can use for other songs, or like I'll completely rewrite it. I've done that a few times, and
Hmm.
it's been a good exercise, because like some stuff that I wrote before, I'm never going to put out or post anywhere, because like it's just not there yet. But I've taken some of those ideas and reworked them, and that I do sometimes. Like I'll post a video of it on my Instagram or something like that, or like start
Mhm.
working on a track, and it's just it's it's nice.
That's really beautiful. I gotta say, because like I can relate to you in that respect. Like I'm thinking about what's in my voice memos because I also sing, and I'm like, okay, it's like sometimes I will wake up in the middle of the night, or I'll like be walking somewhere, and I'm just like, you know, I have some words in my mind. Let me put them in the voice note, and then it's like, and then it's
But
horrible
it's
later.
also
Yeah, but it
difficult.
works for later, so it's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing about music is you can think of it and it can be brilliant, but it can also disappear from your brain just as quickly. And
Right.
that's one thing about, like, music as a form of creativity. It's like that. It's so easy to just pick up a guitar and strum a tune, and it's like, oh, that sounds bad. Okay, next. And like, you don't have a permanent imprint. Like, I'm just thinking about when I paint because that's like my creative outlet.
Right.
And when you're painting, it's physical, it's right there. It's not like you have to remember it.
It's
And if
tangible,
you
yeah.
make yeah,
Right.
but then there's also the side of, like, if you make a mistake, it's not as easy as in music where you can just like restart playing the song or something.
Yep. Yeah. That's
Right.
so cool. I hadn't thought of it, and I think music's one of the few art forms where that's kind of the case.
I almost feel like I can't think of any other where it's like you have to I mean, I guess like there's,
Something for writing.
yeah, writing poetry or reporting, or which is probably a form of creativity in itself.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's what draws so many people to it as well, like music and writing, both of those things, especially music, because there's that sort of freedom, right? There's that sort of malleability
Super
that you get
valuable.
with
Yeah, I
lyrics.
was gonna say that.
Yeah, like you don't get that with like more visual art. So that's why I feel like there's so many people that like pursue music. And that kind of is a good segue into what I wanted to ask you too. So you're 18, right?
Mhm.
And you have kind of again lived the dream, like you're moving out to LA. You've moved out to LA actually, and you are making music and you are doing your thing creatively. What is it like for you in 2021 doing that as an 18-year-old? Because I'm sure you know this too, like so many different people have that dream, right? And it's been like an age-old dream as long as America has existed, right? Go out to LA, you go out and you become a big star, and you audition, you do all this stuff in TV,
You're
film,
making it so
music.
cinematic.
Yeah, because it is.
No,
It's
but
kind of
it's
like
so
a
true.
cinematic
No, it's so
experience.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So what has it been like for you?
it's the market is so saturated right now. Like there's, I think, 40,000 songs put out every day on Spotify. And so I think sometimes it's like thinking of that is a little bit, it can be discouraging, because it's like there's so many, girls my age doing the exact same thing, and sometimes I'll listen to my stuff and I'll listen to someone else's. I think it comes with a lot of like comparing yourself to each other, to other musicians.
Mm.
um like I'll be scrolling on my TikTok and I see some girl that's like that I look at her and I'm like, oh, she's twice as pretty and has a much better voice than I do. And like, you just get like clouded with a bunch of thoughts in your head. And for me, it's been a little difficult because while I am in LA right now, I do have to go back to Caracas because right now, since I'm on a gap year, I'm here on a tourist visa, not a student one, and I can only be here. So I'm not on a visa actually. I'm on an ESTA, which is kind of like a visa but for people in Chile and Europe. It's yeah. So I can only be here for 3 months at a time, and like while I'm here, I can't really like book jobs or do anything of the sort. Like I can't be making money. I mean, if I'm making music, it's fine because I could do that from everywhere, from anywhere.
Hmm.
But like that's also whenever I think of that, I feel like I'm like, I have such a disadvantage to like other people who actually live here and like can stay here year round legally, whereas I have to go like back and forth, even to just be here in LA. But I'm getting my student visa soon, which is great. I'm so excited about that. But I think that's definitely one of the things that's made it, I guess, a little tougher for me, especially just in my head, that I'm just like, oh, like some people have it so much easier, like, or better off. And I just, whenever I think like that, I just try and push those thoughts away and focus on like on the advantages of making music at my age and in this day and age. Like it's so easy to get it out there. 10 years ago this would have been impossible for me, especially living in Venezuela. Like it would have just been so difficult to even get started. Right now I can do everything independently. There's services where you can find producers and college age producers who don't charge nearly as much as a professional one, and then like you can work with them and start building your own like little circle, upload music through like DistroKid or CD Baby, which are like distributors, and it's so much easier. So I try and focus on that rather than focusing on how much competition there is or comparing myself to other people. But obviously, sometimes you fall into that black hole.
Well, you do bring up an interesting point about having the right visa, because I know that, for musicians, visas are a whole just black hole of mess and a barrier almost between nations, and like being able to have a flow of artists and like variability in music almost, because like you said, like you're in LA, you make music, but that doesn't mean you can go out on the street and actually make money or like actually advertise yourself and be like, I'm here as an artist, let me make money now, because you don't have the
Yeah,
right visa. But
it's
how many other artists are out there that are like, just trying to go, I feel like it was the UK right now, the whole thing going on with Brexit. There's
yeah. There's something going on with like performers and how they can't perform in the EU.
because they're going to have to pay for the right type of visa now, basically, to go across borders in the UK,
Yeah,
and performing.
it's definitely tough, and it's not just not. I mean, musician visas and artist visas in general are really hard to obtain, but just like regular visas. My family has been trying to get one for years now, and it's hard. Even living in a country that's suffering from an economic and social and political crisis, it's really hard for us to obtain to be able to move out here legally. And honestly, I feel so grateful and so privileged to have studied at a school that gave me the opportunity to apply, to the colleges I applied to, and that I can go to Duke and come to the States,
Hmm.
and be here legally. But it's honestly it's such a struggle. Like yeah, that whole it's a huge barrier to, especially right now. I noticed when I was in Venezuela. So you know how TikTok, I think it's a fantastic platform to grow on, and especially if you want to reach more people. When I was in Venezuela, it was the algorithm there sucks. Like they would not show my videos. The biggest audience for TikTok is here, or maybe like in Europe or somewhere. My videos would obviously not show up on anyone's For You pages there, and so like my page did not grow. As soon as I got to LA, I started a new account and followers started going up. And then I got kind of shy about it. I started a new account yesterday and I'm already up like 200 followers, which is kind of cool. So I'm hoping that after this interview is done, I'll check it and like the video will have blown up, but we'll see.
Well, we'll
Um,
definitely need.
but even that,
Yeah.
even that, like location, like to blow up or to even like become successful online, being in the States, immediate advantage. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's definitely something. It sucks, but it's okay.
I never even crossed my mind, I guess, that like, location has an impact on an algorithm that determines who does and does not see my content. So that's new to me. I don't know if that's new to you, Nick, but
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of that before, and that's really a technological bias if you really think about it, because the
oh yeah.
U.S. is obviously the biggest music market in the world right now. So, I mean, if you segment people like that, like you kind of make sure that only a certain type of person is accessible to the market, and only a certain type of person gains any success in the industry.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's kind of why we exist, right? Like we want to kind of bridge that gap. So I'm really happy that we're talking to you about this and that you brought this up because I didn't know about that. Also, I wanted to say ask like what's your handle too? Your for your new TikTok.
Barbara Teresa music on TikTok.
Barbara Teresa Music, and that's
I
Teresa
can
T
type
E
in the chat.
R.
Teresa, and then Barbara, it's Barbara.
Okay, dope. Well, everybody who's watching this right now, follow her.
And then on
Definitely.
Instagram, it's Barbara Teresa C.
Barbara Teresa C. Okay, dope.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like that's really interesting because like you have Americans at least that are just like, oh yeah, let me head out to LA. I'm gonna become a big artist, and it's like, oh, like that's where I want to be. But like I don't think anybody in this country ever really considers how difficult it is for somebody who is an immigrant to try to make it in the American music industry.
Yeah, because we can just, drive on over and live there, and after 6 months maybe become a resident, and then you have like, your license is from California, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's
It's
not as hard.
it's tough, but again, I'm really glad that I'm going to be able to be living here legally for 4 years as a student.
Hmm.
And I guess I'll figure it out as I go, and hopefully with the new administration, if they do, as said, a lot more Latinos will be getting visas yearly. So
Mhm.
crossing my fingers that my family's able to get theirs.
Damn, that's great.
Likewise.
Yeah.
So what about your music too? So I really wanted to also talk about Saturday Night,
Mhm.
like your newest track. Um, I mean, I think Shay even mentioned this in the introduction. Like you kind of combine a lot of different sort of sounds when it comes to your music, right? So you have like pop, you have R&B, but you also have influences from folk and a couple of other genres as well. And you're a part of that sort of genre bending artistry that's kind of characteristic of Gen Z artists, I gotta say.
I almost hate saying that it is genre bending because it's just like it's your music. It's not like you're trying to bend the genres. It's just like, oh,
Exactly.
take R&B
True.
and make it folk. It's just it is your type of music, and that's how best to put it into words, I guess.
Yeah. Like whenever I get questions like asking me what artists I sound like, I feel like that's a hard question to answer because there's artists that have definitely influenced me and there's artists I kind of want to sound like and want to embody. But I think of at least the two songs I have out, not the ones that I have stored. Sorry. I think of those two and I'm like, okay, who does this sound like?
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's a pretentious thing to say to think that there's like I can't find an artist whose music mine sounds like, but it's like I I don't know. I just sometimes it's hard to pinpoint it down, especially pinpointing it down to one genre. So yeah, I guess, but I think it's a good way to describe it, like pop, where I blend in other genres that I like. I think
Mhm.
that's the most accurate way to describe it, I guess.
No, no, the most accurate way to describe it is how you described it. It's you. It is you. Like it's not just like these broad categories coming together. You're right. It is you. It's how you find best to interpret the world around you. So no, that's completely right.
And you
So
taught yourself, right? You taught yourself to play guitar and
Guitar
ukulele.
and ukulele, yeah. I do take piano lessons, but guitar I picked up by myself. I remember, so when I was younger, up until like fourth grade, I played the violin from like kindergarten up to fourth grade, but I never loved it. And then in fourth grade, my parents enrolled my brother and I in piano lessons, and there I fell in love with the instrument. Like I was so happy I found an instrument that like I really loved.
Hmm.
But I remember as soon as we started playing piano, before we started playing piano and after we finished like with the violin, we saw that we didn't like it that much. I remember I begged my parents like I want to play guitar, I want to play guitar because I love Taylor Swift and I've loved her since I was really little, and so her main instrument's a guitar. I was like,
Hmm.
please, Dad, I want a guitar. Never got it until I was 15. Um, but I started teaching myself, and it's been fun. And I had a lot of time during quarantine to practice, so it's definitely gotten better. But
Hmm.
I think that's something I'm proud of teaching myself how to
I just picked up the guitar last year during quarantine because I was like, well, here we go. I guess I have time on my hands now.
Have you been playing it frequently, Shay?
I have. I actually just learned Your Best American Girl by Nikisi. I don't remember her name exactly, but it's definitely a very, very simple yet rocking song. Like I can pretend that I'm a rock star. Meanwhile, I'm just playing like one chord the entire time or
It's
something.
okay. It's the intention that counts.
Yeah.
You are a rock star to me, Shay.
Yeah.
Shay's your rockstar.
Yes.
Well,
Um,
we'll see.
we'll see what happens. But so I want to also touch on another topic that really kind of hooked me with you and your story. So it is that sort of like you have to travel from Venezuela to LA and you have to travel back again. What tell me what it's like in I guess in Venezuela right now for artists, given kind of the recent issues that the country's been having with a whole bunch of things, including the economy and everything else. What has it been like for artists there? Do you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not too in touch with that, but I do know it's definitely difficult because even sustaining yourself with like a regular job there, it's hard enough. I can't imagine what it's like to actually try being, trying to be like a musician there when people don't really have time for entertainment. Like, and especially now during the pandemic, I'm guessing it's really hard. Recently I collabed with a Caribbean pop band in Venezuela because I won this contest and I recorded a song with them. And so like I didn't talk much while I was there because it was only guys there when I was recording and I was a little shy. So I didn't talk much, but from what they were talking about, like they usually most of them are musicians as well. And so they'll play gigs like as part of a band for another group. And that's kind of how they do it. But like to do music full time, it's you have to be pretty big and have like an audience outside of Venezuela and more in like other places in Latin America or even in the States to actually be able to make a living off of it. So it's difficult. I mean, I write music in Spanish as well, and I do want to put it out because I love it, but I kind of want to establish a little bit more of a presence before going into that. But I think it might be a good idea to actually start. I mean, now that I think of it, it might be a good idea to start putting it out now and maybe get more in touch with people in Latin America and Spain and stuff like that because I think that could definitely be a good way to take it. Like I don't know if you guys listen to Kalley. I
Yes,
love her
absolutely.
so much. She's Colombian, right? And she started off like her biggest market was in Latin America, and now she's blending both English and Spanish in her songs. And
Mhm.
well,
Right.
right now she's blowing up, so I'm so happy for her.
Right.
But I adore her, and I think what she's doing is awesome. So it would be cool to follow in kind of in those footsteps.
And that's really popular right now too, because that's another thing that, is kind of happening with the music industry internationally. Latin music is getting a lot more mainstream attention than it used
Oh
to.
my gosh, Bad Bunny? Yeah.
I was just gonna mention him, and I think he has he played such a large role in that. I'm so happy because I'm seeing a bunch of Latino artists actually be recognized by people in the States and in Europe and in places where the music market is just so much bigger. I think Bad Bunny played a really large role. I love him and I love his music. But I think he's done a great job of bridging that gap between Latin American artists and American ones. And there's been like a lot of collaboration. I do notice like a lot of artists that maybe haven't released stuff in a while, like they're trying to collaborate with reggaetoneros, like people who sing reggaeton, because they know that it's popping off. And I think that's awesome. Really, I'm very happy about that. And they put out some great songs like in English and Spanish. I think
Hmm.
it's good. I wanna hear more.
I agree. I want to hear more from you too. I would love to hear you singing in Spanish. I mean, it is a beautiful language, but when you sing Spanish, I mean, that's a romantic language into another form of art. I mean, I don't think it can get much better.
It's
But
awesome.
So, I mean, I also kind of want to ask too, um, do you feel like, do you feel like there's some sort of like limitation to like your art because I mean, we talked about how like mainstream like English music is still like very very popular, and like even though Latin music is breaking that popularity, like do you still feel pressured to write only in English and like release stuff that's only in English?
That's a good question, and honestly, something I've put a lot of thought into. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think it definitely there's advantages to both, like releasing music in English and Spanish. Um, but honestly, I think the reason why I do write more in English than I do in Spanish, and I think the reason is because I went to an international school growing up, so I'm like I'm equally comfortable speaking both languages, and like I'm perfectly fluent in Spanish. But I think because I went to school in an all English speaking school, except like for Spanish classes and like breaks with my friends, I my brain's kind of programmed to think in English. So sometimes when I write my thoughts down or start writing a song, I'll automatically do it in English. But I think it also
Mm-hmm.
depends on what I'm writing about and sometimes who I'm writing about. And like whether like it has to do with, you know, like if I'm writing about someone and there's someone who always speaks in Spanish to me and like someone who's from Venezuela, I'll likely go back to those conversations, in Spanish and start writing in Spanish about it because I can just draw back from the experience and like use things from it
Mm-hmm.
in an easier way. But I think I usually just go tend to write in English and think in English, which I think is fine. I should be doing more reading and like talking in Spanish in general because it's my native language and it's kind of embarrassing to say I feel more comfortable in English, but it happens. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about in this past year, while you've been recording these songs and introducing yourself into the music industry, what has your experience been like with the music industry, and how have you connected with people? I mean, have you connected with people in LA?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm still kind of like stepping into it. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel fully immersed yet.
Hmm.
I think a lot of what I was doing earlier last year, so in August when I actually started, making my music, well, not writing it, but like actually producing it, like getting it produced and recording and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, it was like from like August to November, it was a very big and a very important learning period for me because I
Hmm.
was just learning about distribution, about management, PR, etc. Like everyone that should be on an independent artist team, like all of that. I was just kind of learning about it and the process of actually releasing music, and so I still feel relatively new to that. Um, I have been able to connect with people like online. Honestly, what I just do, I just DM people. Like if I like their music and I see that they're a small artist, I'll try and connect with them and see. Because I mean, I honestly think, yeah, I think it's nice to grow a little bit of a network, and especially with people you think, might end up being pretty successful later on. It's great to just already start forming a relationship with them. And so sometimes they don't answer, sometimes they do, but that's kind of what I've been doing. And right now I'm working with a mixer who's helping me with some tracks, and he's worked with really cool artists. Like he's worked with Melanie Martinez and then a couple others, and it's just like knowing
Oh,
people like that and working with them is. I definitely think hopefully it's helpful in the future. Yeah,
I'm a fan of Melanie Martinez.
I was obsessed with her like for like when I was in middle school. I was a huge Melanie Martinez fan.
Oh, I just had something on my. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. I wanted to let you know that we have a community. Well, I mean, like basically our platform is to make a community
Mm-hmm.
for POC and or LGBTQ plus musicians, and so we do have all of these artists that we've done interviews with, and I think that for you it would be great if you want to look back at some of our artists and maybe reach out to them, because we actually had one of the artists that we interview reach out to another artist we interviewed, and now they're going to collab.
That's
So
so
like,
cool.
Yep.
yeah, so like I think it would be, I mean, I just love to see it happen. It's not like we like told him to do that, but he
Yeah,
did.
it just ended up happening.
Yeah, and I'm like, I want to encourage more people to do this, because like if we could like connect creatives so that they could like
That's amazing.
combine their power and passion.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've been talking
Yeah,
about this for a really long time too. Like we've been talking about like being that platform that connects artists together so we can just get some really bomb
I
music
definitely see that happening. Like that's wonderful.
Yes.
in the
Okay.
future. But I did have a question because it's Women's History Month and this is going to be coming out for Women's History Month. I wanted to talk about your experience as a young woman in the industry. Um, what I mean, has there been any sort of like limitation or injustice or any benefit that you feel like you've gotten navigating the music industry as a young woman?
Yeah. Honestly, recent more like I have like a couple like more recent experiences, and then stuff that's kind of okay. I just lost my train of thought. Uh huh. um. Well, first of all, before even getting into it, so I love making music, but I also love film, and I think it would be awesome to immerse myself in the film industry as well at some point in the future. But I think a big like question mark that I've always had is like I've always had a little bit of like, fear of being taken advantage of or having something happen to me because I'm a woman in this highly saturated industry where so many again young women like me want to make it big in, and it's just like it's always something I've been iffy like been a bit iffy about like do I want to go into this, because that and I do think it's a very valid fear. It's not like a fear of being judged or whatever, like this is it's more serious because it's like yeah, I mean women constantly their work gets undermined first of all because they're women, and then people feel like they have the right to take advantage of them because they want to advance their career, and it's a really big fear of mine. Obviously nothing has happened to me yet, and I hope nothing ever does, but it's something I've always been scared of. um Recently actually, this was kind of unfortunate, but you know what, it happens. I worked on a music video for Saturday Night, my last single, which you guys should all check out if you're listening to this podcast. um I shot a music video, and my cousin, she directed it. And the DP we were working with, it's like there weren't any like direct comments made to us, but it was like sometimes I felt like my ideas or hers, she was directing the whole project, were like overlooked, because we're women. And it's like, okay, but we're heading the project, like let us, lead. And my cousin who directs films, she had her own, she shot her own her first feature film 2 years ago, and she said that on set she experienced so much like so much sexism. Whereas like she's head of the project, she was producing it, directing it, and like people who were hired by her would say like, oh, are you like, she would direct and say something, and they did, are you sure you don't want to try this? And they'd say it so many times, she's like, no, like this is the shot I want.
I know, and then it just pisses you off, and it's like,
Yeah, and it's like,
don't
okay,
make me lose
who's
my
working for who? Really? Like, I'm supposed. It's just, and I know I'm gonna have to come across things like that
Mhm.
all the time, and like, and judgment from people who will judge you, on your looks before anything else. It's just like there's so much, there's so much of that, in the world, but especially like creative industries, and it's just something that I mean, I obviously want to change that, but I don't. It's slow progress, So it's something that I think it's just all girls kind of have to learn how to not deal with, but learn how to like strategically like either avoid it or shut people down who are treating you that way. But it's like, yeah, I think it's something everyone has to learn.
There's so many double standards for women.
It's ridiculous the amount of double standards that there are in these industries. Like, and I think sometimes people don't men don't do it on purpose. I just think everyone's brains are programmed to think like a woman isn't supposed to be in charge or doing X or Y. I also think something that's I guess impacted me is that so I started a production course recently, and I've been trying to get into production. But I think one of the reasons I was hesitant on doing it is because I think female producers only make up to 2% of the like music producers who are actively working right now, which is a ridiculously small amount.
Hmm.
And so I'm just like, I feel like there's going to be so much more judgment. Like if you produce your own stuff or produce from someone else, if you're a woman, even though the quality of work might be the same as a man's. So it's like, I think that's also that kind of held me back a little from even starting to get into it. But again, that's such a stupid reason. So I told myself, just do it, Barbara. Like, it's a course.
There's,
Take the course, and then see what you do with it.
mhm.
Um, yeah, I think it's definitely tough. And then something that I also don't want to happen is like, if I do end up, growing a bit and maybe getting management, like I don't want to be, I don't want them to paint an image of me that I don't necessarily like. And it's like there's so many things that you have to deal with, especially as a woman. Like women are extremely sexualized in this industry
Mhm.
and in many others, sometimes against their own will. So it's like again, that's something I wouldn't want to face, but people do every day, which sucks.
Exactly. And I want to go back to something that you said too. Like, you think that I mean, you said it's possible that like men are kind of conditioned to just kind of see a woman as not really being deserving of the position of power that she's in. Um, I think that that's true, but I also think that there is a lot more blame that can be put on men like that. I mean, because nobody's gonna question. It's not even embedded in anyone to question authority. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very human nature to kind of submit to authority. So when you have somebody that is deliberately second guessing somebody who is in authority, who's a woman, like it's on purpose. Like it's not
Literally
something.
on purpose, yeah.
It's not just like, oh, I was brought up this way, so I expect that.
No, yeah,
No,
there's no excuse really.
none. So I mean, I just wanted to offer that, I guess, male perspective because, like, it's there's some people out there who are really just like ridiculous, and they really don't value the opinions and the incredible ideas of women. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
And
it's honestly something that I just don't understand, and I don't think I ever will, because there's no really explanation to it. It's just
and you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to understand it. It shouldn't exist.
yeah,
it shouldn't exist, but the thing is that growing up a woman, there are things that like you're told, or you're given like a baby doll, and you're told to care for this baby doll because that's what like. And maybe little girls do like to play with baby dolls and such, but it's just like ingrained into women to like say okay, like when somebody second
adhere to a
guesses
role
you.
and norms. Yeah,
Yeah, or like, if you're pissed off because somebody second guessed you or something, it's like, oh, you're being a bitch. Or
yeah,
like, or if women try to actually stand up for themselves and be strong, then they're just like, oh, you're a really strong-headed woman, and then there's double standards of that as well. So it's like, how are we supposed to balance it? And then there's, going into the music industry. I think that you're at this rather particular junction where it's just like you haven't had any experience with the music industry, but there's still that fear, that sense of like something could happen because you hear of all these stories and you're like, that could happen to me. And honestly, like, I feel like every woman experiences that in some degree or another, being
in all fields.
suppressed for being a woman.
Mhm.
But also, oh no, where was I going with this? Oh, I hate that.
It was good. Keep preaching.
But there was one other place I wanted to take it though, which is gone from my brain now. But which is frustrating. But
But I
I
think you touched on some really good points, though, Shay. Like, women, specific, like, and you said, Barbara, like, across all industries, that's something that women face. But, like, I want to say, too, like, particularly women in entertainment, women in the music industry, like, it's even heavier from what I've seen. Like, I know I'm an outsider looking in, but from
100%,
what I'm
yeah.
seeing, like, in the field of entertainment, like, women, they have to be sex symbols. I don't know why
they have
people
to be
feel like
sex
they
And
have
you
to.
have
symbols.
to
They have
do
to wear
so much
heels, wear
more.
makeup, wear
Yeah,
Exactly. And then
I feel
even when they carry, like I'm thinking of Nicki Minaj specifically right now, right? So Nicki Minaj has the talent. She obviously does have the looks and the style and everything.
everything,
But
everything.
like, and that's helped her succeed and run female rap over the course of like what, 8 years,
But
seven,
she's
eight
still so
years?
second guessed by everyone. Like no one recognizes the impact that that woman has had for rap music. Not just female rappers, but like rap in general. Like
Period. Yeah.
she's done so much, and people underestimate her so much. And
Yes.
it's you have to do so much more to prove yourself, and you have to be just more likable, and you
Mhm.
have to literally reinvent yourself. So I don't know if you guys have watched Taylor Swift's documentary on Netflix, Miss Americana. She says something in it that I think is so true. Like and I know a lot of female artists do this. Like every time they release a new album, it's a whole new era for them. Like they do something completely different to what they did before. They reinvent themselves. They're constantly doing something new,
Hmm.
and obviously it's fun, it's nice, it keeps things interesting, but it's because they literally have to.
Had to. Yep.
Because if they don't give the audience something new, they just won't pay attention to it. How many male artists do you see doing that? None.
Mhm.
Or very few. Like, but they don't have to reinvent themselves nearly as much. They just kind of they stick with what they do, and people buy it, people like it, but they don't ever do something like wildly new. Whereas female artists, you see them doing that literally every single album. They'll change it up in some way or form. Like they have this whole aesthetic for it. They'll have everything. Like it's I don't know, it pisses me off. I mean, I think it's so cool that these female artists do this, because it just makes their careers so much more interesting, and like they're just I see them as more versatile and just as more capable. But like, why do they have to do that to keep earning money, and why do men not have to do it? That's a question that bugs
That's the question.
me.
And that's one of the reasons why, personally, I find myself paying more attention to female performers. Like, I really like a lot of female performers in comparison to a lot of male performers, because you're right. I mean, even though you do have like Bruno Mars's, like they're not a dime a dozen. Like they're one of a kind. Like they don't come around in the industry often. You do see a lot of men that are equally as successful as women, not really putting out the same sort of creative versatility that women have to put out.
Yep.
I definitely agree with that. And that's consistent across every single female mega pop star, mega rap star, mega star in general.
It's as if women have to prove something. They have to like prove that they have earned their space.
Totally. They have to prove themselves all the time, way more than men. That's like, I think that's the comment I started that with. It's just it's that they're expected to prove themselves.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize on behalf of the male species.
That is a lot.
I hope so.
But yeah, I know it's time to wrap up. But we have two more questions for you to end on. And I'll ask my question, which is what advice do you have to other young creatives or people already in the music industry? Maybe something you've observed or something that helped you succeed. What do you want to share to our audience?
Well, the first piece of advice I always give anyone, it's just do it. First of all, just get started. And once you get started, like make it like anything, like prioritize. If it's something that you really want, have that at the top of your list and constantly, be thinking about it, be working actively towards your goal, and really try hard on working not to second guess yourself. Um, because things aren't, most things aren't given to you. You have to work for them. And this is like anything else. Like, yeah, maybe you'll get lucky and blow up on TikTok and become a huge star overnight, but that's the exception to the rule. And if you want it, work for it, and take your and good things come with time. I think that's the second.
Oh, I think that's great advice. And I guess I'll ask my question too. Do you have any upcoming projects that you'd like to talk about, to tease? Because I really want to hear what's next from you.
Yeah, so I'm going to be releasing a single probably late March, my third single. And then sometime late in the spring, I'm hoping to release my first EP. It's going to be called Text I Never Sent. And my cousin and I are currently working on creating music videos for pretty much all the tracks. So I want to tell a visual story instead of just, one through music, where people can kind of see where I drew inspiration from originally. So
I love that. And you have the creative genius for both ends, both like the cinematography and the film of the videos, but also the music itself. So I'm sure that's going to be a piece of art. And I'm going to watch that. And I think everybody else should.
Likewise. Well, since we are at the end of time, I just want to, obviously thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Cultural Reset. But I also just want to thank you, Barbara. This has been an amazing and informative conversation. Like, I've learned a lot just having talked to you. And I really hope that everybody learned a lot as well. So, that being said, we're wrapping up. We're signing off. This has been
Happy
TCR.
Women's Month to
Happy
you.
Women's Month.
Happy Women's Month. I celebrate you.
I celebrate you too.
I celebrate you too. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much.